At my cousin Tessa's engagement dinner, I sat at the end of a long, glittering table, draped in white linen, my son Milo tucked at the kids' corner, with crayons and chicken tenders. I wore my best dress, 2 years old, a little too snug, and the silver heart necklace Milo had picked for me that morning. I tried to smile, to breathe, to blend in. That's what my mother had begged me to do. Just show up, eat a little, don't cause a scene. But the weight of judgment pressed on me like the soft lighting in that upscale restaurant. Every glance from my relatives seemed sharper than the polished cutlery. I felt like an exhibit on display, 32 years old, single, a mother working 2 jobs to stay afloat. I knew what they whispered when I wasn't around. I knew I was the cautionary tale no one wanted to claim as family. I kept my head down, buttered my bread, and pretended not to notice the smirks. When Tessa floated past me in her silk dress, perfumed and glowing, she kissed my cheek with a smile that never reached her eyes. "So glad you came. Did you bring a +1 or just Milo?" she asked. Her voice dripped with sugar and poison at the same time. "Just Milo," I answered. "Oh," she said, already turning away. It should have rolled off my back. I'd grown used to it, the jokes at baby showers, the whispers at Christmas, the way my own mother sometimes looked at me like she was bracing herself for an apology I would never give. But sitting there listening to the hum of conversation and clinking glasses, I felt smaller with every passing moment. When the champagne flutes were raised, I prepared myself for a polite toast, but Tessa tapped her glass, smiled with practiced charm, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I hope I never end up like her, single with a kid." She tilted her glass toward me. The laughter that followed wasn't polite. It was sharp-cutting, cruel. My Uncle Reuben slapped the table, roaring, "Men don't want used goods. That's just how it is." Even my own mother let out a little chuckle as she reached for her wine. I froze, my face burned, my heart pounded so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. I gripped my napkin until it twisted into knots under the table. Around me, the people who were supposed to love me laughed at me like I was a cheap punchline. I thought of Milo just a few feet away, oblivious, drawing rockets on a napkin. He didn't know they were laughing at his mother like she was nothing more than a broken thing. I wanted to speak. I wanted to shout that at least I was raising a child with love, while Tessa was still chasing validation. I wanted to walk out, slam the door, never look back. But I swallowed it. I sat still, cheeks burning, shame pressing on me like a stone. And then the room shifted. Dylan, Tessa's fiancé, pushed back his chair. He didn't smile. He didn't play along. He walked across the room, each step slicing through the laughter until it died into silence. He stopped beside me. The air felt heavy, every eye pinned on us. For a heartbeat, I thought he might join in the ridicule, finish me off with another cruel line. But instead, his voice cut through the silence. "I think they should know something." The words dropped like a stone in still water. The room froze. My cousin blinked, confused. My uncle lowered his glass. My mother finally looked at me instead of past me. I couldn't breathe. Dylan's jaw was tight, his eyes steady. He scanned the table and said, calm but clear, "You laugh at her like she's some kind of failure. But what you don't know is that she's the strongest person in this room." The room hung in stunned silence. My pulse thundered in my ears. I didn't understand what was happening. All I knew was that for the first time in years, someone wasn't laughing at me. Someone was standing for me. You could hear the clink of a fork dropping into a plate somewhere down the table. That's how silent it became. Tessa's smile faltered, her cheeks stiff with confusion. "Dylan, what are you doing?" she hissed, her polished veneer cracking. But Dylan didn't look at her. His gaze stayed locked on me. "She saved my life," he said simply, like the words were an unshakable fact, "and none of you even know it." My breath caught. The laughter had left, but humiliation still clung to me like smoke. I didn't know what Dylan was about to reveal, but I could feel every eye boring into me, waiting. He straightened, his voice calm but unyielding. 5 years ago, before I ever met Tessa, I was a mess. Drinking too much, driving too fast, throwing away every chance I had. One night, I ended up in a hospital. My ribs broken, my blood alcohol level through the roof. And do you know who was the nurse that sat with me all night? Who held my hand when I couldn't even breathe from the pain? Who told me I wasn't worthless when I begged her to just let me die? The room shifted. My mother's lips parted. My uncle leaned forward, stunned into silence. "It was her," Dylan said, pointing at me. "The woman you laugh at now. The single mother you mock like she's a failure. She was the one who refused to give up on me when I had already given up on myself." Heat rushed through my body. My throat tightened. I remembered that night, not his face clearly, not even his name then, but the desperation in his eyes, the way he clung to my words like they were a lifeline. I had said those things to so many patients over the years, never knowing which ones would carry the words with them. Tessa's voice snapped like glass. "This is insane. Why are you bringing this up now?" "She's nothing to you." Dylan's eyes turned cold. "She's not nothing. She's the reason I'm alive to even stand here beside you. Without her, there would be no engagement dinner, no wedding. I wouldn't be here." The air grew thick. My hands trembled under the table, my napkin twisted into shreds. Milo looked up from his drawing, sensing the shift, his wide eyes darting between me and the adults. I tried to smile at him, but my lips wouldn't move. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to melt into the floor. But at the same time, something fierce began to rise inside me, an old buried flame that hadn't burned in years. For so long, I had been defined by whispers, by judgments, by the scarlet letter of being a single mom. And here suddenly the truth was standing in front of me, undeniable, undeniable. Tessa's face darkened. She laughed brittle and sharp. "So what? She was just doing her job. That doesn't make her special." "No," Dylan said firmly, his voice cutting through her bitterness. "She went beyond her job. She saw me. She believed in me when no one else did. You call her broken, but she's the one who gave me the strength to fix my life." My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, though she quickly looked down into her glass. My uncle, for once, had no joke to add. The entire table sat in a stunned, guilty silence. And I, me, the woman they had mocked for years, sat trembling with a storm of emotions I couldn't name. Pride, shame, relief, fury, vindication. I wanted to run, but I also wanted to stay and let them sit in the silence their cruelty had earned. Dylan wasn't finished. His hand rested on the back of my chair, not possessively, but protectively. "So the next time any of you want to laugh at her, remember this. The reason you get to see me alive, the reason I get to marry Tessa is because of her." A hush hung in the air like heavy fog. Tessa's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes blazing with anger she couldn't disguise. And me. My heart raced so hard it ached, but beneath the pounding, I felt something shift. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking under their judgment. I was sitting in the center of it, exposed, yes, but finally seen. The silence that followed felt like a storm cloud pressing against the walls. I could feel Tessa's anger radiating across the table, sharp and cutting, even though she forced a smile for the guests. She tried to wave it off, lifting her glass like nothing had happened. "Well," she said too brightly, "isn't that touching? But really, Dylan, we don't need to dig up sob stories at an engagement dinner." But her voice cracked on the last word, betraying her. Dylan didn't sit back down. His hand stayed steady on my chair. "It's not a sob story," he said firmly. "It's the truth. And the truth deserves a place at this table." I couldn't bring myself to look at Tessa. My eyes stayed fixed on Milo, who had stopped drawing and was now clutching his crayon so tightly the wax threatened to break. I reached across and touched his shoulder, giving him the reassurance I didn't feel myself. My uncle cleared his throat, trying to regain the upper hand. "We all have our struggles," he muttered. "Doesn't mean we need to turn dinner into a therapy session." I opened my mouth, ready to shrink back, as I always had, ready to apologize just for existing. But Dylan spoke before I could. "No," he said sharply. "It means we stop pretending someone's life is worth less just because it doesn't look shiny on the outside." The table fell quiet again. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. She wouldn't look at me. For years, she had been embarrassed by me, ashamed to introduce me as her daughter who had failed at marriage, who was raising a child on her own. I wondered if she was replaying all those moments in her head right now, feeling the sting of guilt she had never allowed herself before. I wanted to feel triumphant. I wanted to relish their discomfort, to hold it up like a mirror to their cruelty. But instead, all I felt was tired. Tired of fighting to prove my worth. Tired of swallowing my voice. Tired of being the family's punchline. I pushed my chair back slowly, the sound scraping against the polished floor. "I didn't come here for this," I said softly, though my voice shook. "I came because I thought maybe, just maybe, family could mean more than judgment." Tessa's laugh was high and hollow. "Oh, don't be dramatic. No one meant anything by it." But the faces around the table told a different story. Some looked guilty. Some looked away. None defended her. For the first time, I stood tall even as my knees trembled. "I'm not dramatic. I'm done." My hand reached for Milo's. He looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes, and without hesitation he slid out of his chair and came to my side. Dylan's gaze met mine. There was no pity in his eyes, only respect. "You don't have to take this," he said quietly, so only I could hear. I swallowed hard. "I know." I turned ready to leave, but before I could take a step, Tessa slammed her glass onto the table. "You always make everything about you," she snapped, her voice rising. The perfect bride mask shattered. "You think you're some kind of hero because you work and scrape by? You think anyone admires that? No one wants to be you." Her words hung in the air, acidic and cruel. And for once, I didn't shrink from them. I met her glare, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "No one has to want to be me. I just want my son to grow up proud of his mother. That's enough." The silence that followed was heavier than any laughter had ever been. Dylan's expression hardened. If anyone here should be ashamed, it's not her. The dinner ended in fragments after that. Conversations broke into awkward whispers, plates half-eaten, the glow of celebration extinguished. I gathered Milo's drawings, folded them into my bag, and walked out with his hand in mine. But as the night air hit my face, I realized something for the first time in years. I hadn't left in silence. I hadn't swallowed my pain just to keep the peace. I had stood trembling but unbroken and let my voice be heard. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether the family would shun me more, whether Tessa would spin her story to make me the villain again. But for the first time, it didn't matter, because Milo had seen me stand tall, and that was enough. The days after that dinner stretched like heavy shadows. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives, most of them short and sharp. "You embarrassed Tessa. That wasn't the place for drama. You made yourself look desperate." Only a few sent words of quiet support: an aunt who had always been softer with me, a cousin who said she admired my courage. But mostly the chorus was the same: I had stepped out of line by refusing to accept the ridicule. I wanted to let their words wash over me, but some nights they sank deep, reopening the old wound of never being enough. I would lie awake, Milo asleep beside me in our cramped apartment, wondering if standing up had really changed anything. But then I remembered the look in his eyes that night, the way he had seen me stand, the way his small hand had gripped mine with trust. That memory kept me steady. And then a week later, Dylan called. His voice was low, hesitant. "I know things got messy," he said. "But I need you to know I meant every word. You didn't just save me that night in the hospital, you reminded me I was worth saving, and I'll never forget it." I didn't know what to say. Gratitude tangled with guilt. Gratitude that he had spoken the truth. Guilt that it had exploded his engagement dinner like a firecracker. But part of me, the part long starved of respect, held his words close like a lifeline. Tessa, meanwhile, wasted no time rewriting the story. At family gatherings without me, she painted herself as the victim. She claimed I had tried to humiliate her, that I'd used Dylan's past to steal the spotlight. But whispers spread too fast for her to contain. People asked questions, some even Googled, and found records of Dylan's accident, the hospital he had been admitted to, the nurse on duty that night. My name was there in black and white. Proof. For once, truth was louder than rumor. I braced myself for the wedding, certain I would be uninvited. But the invitation still arrived, crisp and elegant, my name written beside Milo's in swirling calligraphy. I stared at it for days, unsure if attending would be walking into another ambush. On the morning of the wedding, I almost stayed home. I sat on the edge of the bed, Milo tugging at his little tie, asking Mom, "Are we really going?" His excitement was pure, unclouded by the adult games around us. In his eyes, a wedding was about love, about family. I couldn't take that away from him. So I put on my dress, the same one from the engagement dinner, and held my head a little higher this time. The ceremony was beautiful, every detail dripping with perfection. Tessa glided down the aisle like a queen, her smile dazzling for the cameras, but I saw the stiffness in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened when she caught sight of me. Dylan's eyes, though, flickered to me just once, steady, grateful, unashamed. At the reception, whispers buzzed again when I walked in. Some people looked at me with pity, some with guilt, others with curiosity. I held Milo's hand tighter, grounding myself in his small warmth. I told myself I wasn't there for them. I was there for me, for him. The dinner was a blur of speeches and music until Dylan stood once more, microphone in hand. Tessa beamed at him, expecting a polished toast. But Dylan's voice carried a different weight. "I want to thank everyone here for celebrating with us," he began. "And I want to thank one person in particular, someone who reminded me that strength isn't about perfection, but about resilience." My chest tightened, his eyes found mine across the room. "She sat at this very table weeks ago and was mocked for being a single mom. But what most of you don't know is that years ago she gave me the courage to live when I wanted to give up. She treated me with compassion when I thought I didn't deserve it. Without her, I wouldn't be standing here today. Without her, there wouldn't even be a wedding." Gasps rippled through the room. Tessa's smile froze brittle and pale. I felt every eye on me, but this time I didn't shrink. I sat tall, Milo's hand in mine, my heart pounding with equal parts fear and vindication. The applause that followed wasn't unanimous, but it was real. Some clapped hesitantly, others with conviction. My mother's eyes shimmered with tears she didn't hide this time. Even my uncle's smirk had faltered into silence. And me, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the joke. I felt like the truth had finally been spoken aloud in a room that had long drowned me in laughter. The applause faded into the clinking of glasses and the shuffle of chairs, but the echo of Dylan's words stayed with me. My pulse still raced, my palms damp against the fabric of my dress. Yet for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Tessa tried to regain control of the room, lifting her champagne flute and flashing her dazzling smile. "Well," she said, voice trembling ever so slightly, "let's all focus on the happy couple tonight." But the shift had already happened. People glanced between us. Their laughter dimmed, their whispers softer, tinged with unease. For once, the weight of judgment wasn't on me. Later, as the music swelled and the dance floor filled, I slipped outside with Milo. The cool night air wrapped around us, and he looked up at me with wide eyes. "Mom," he said, "why did everyone clap for you?" I knelt, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "Because someone told the truth," I said softly. "And the truth is powerful, even when it's scary." He grinned, gap-toothed and radiant. "I always knew you were the strongest mom." His words undid me. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of crayons and shampoo, the grounding reality of the one person whose opinion had always mattered most. Inside, I could hear Tessa's voice rising again, trying to reclaim the spotlight. But Dylan's toast had already cracked the facade she had built, and nothing could patch it fully. I didn't stay to watch her mask slip further. I had no need to. That night, back in our small apartment, I hung my dress carefully instead of tossing it aside. Milo fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the excitement, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling. For so long I had lived in shame, ashamed of my mistakes, ashamed of being left, ashamed of struggling while everyone else seemed to glide effortlessly through life. I had let their laughter define me. But the truth was different. I wasn't weak. I wasn't a failure. I was a survivor. I was a mother who fought every day to give her child love, safety, and dignity. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, I had changed someone else's life too. The next morning, I found a message on my phone. It was from Dylan. "I know last night wasn't easy, but thank you for saving me back then and for letting me speak now. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small again." I stared at the words for a long time. I wasn't sure what the future would hold, whether my family would soften or whether I would always remain on the outside. But it didn't matter anymore. I had my son, I had my truth, and I had the knowledge that kindness, even in the smallest moments, could ripple outward in ways I might never fully understand. Weeks turned into months, and little by little the whispers quieted. Some relatives never apologized, but their laughter stopped. My mother, hesitant and halting, began to soften. She came by more often, bringing Milo little gifts, asking about my work, listening instead of judging. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I no longer walked into family gatherings with my head bowed. I walked in holding my son's hand, knowing I had nothing to be ashamed of. If anyone dared to laugh again, I knew their laughter said more about them than it ever could about me. And in the quiet moments late at night, when Milo was asleep, when the world felt still, I allowed myself to feel pride. Not the loud, boastful kind, but the quiet kind that lives deep in your bones. The kind that says, I survived, I mattered, I was enough all along. If you're hearing my story right now, I want you to carry this truth with you. People will laugh, people will judge, people will try to define you by your scars. But your worth isn't decided by their whispers or their cruelty. It's decided by the love you give, the resilience you show, and the truth you carry, even when it feels unbearable. So please, if this story resonated with you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need courage today, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like mine. And don't forget to comment. I read them all, and your words might give strength to someone else who needs it. Because in the end, laughter fades, but truth endures. And sometimes being laughed at is just the beginning of being truly seen.